Doin Ajayi did not wake up that morning planning to become anyone's wife. She planned to finish her shift at Seoul University Hospital, cram pharmacology notes over instant noodles, and maybe, if the universe showed kindness, catch 4 hours of sleep. Instead, she was holding a clipboard while a pale man with infuriatingly perfect cheekbones wheezed on a hospital bed, surrounded by frantic executives in suits. "Name?" Doin asked briskly, pen ready. The man's voice was a rasp, low but commanding. "Confidential." She raised an eyebrow. "Sir, your lungs don't care about confidentiality. I need a legal proxy to sign consent, or we waste more precious time arguing." The suits exchanged nervous glances. A woman with a severe bun stepped forward. "Miss Ajayi, there is an option. A temporary spousal consent. Standard in certain families." She placed a sleek folder on the counter like it was a peace treaty. Doin frowned. The header read, "Emergency Spousal Agreement." "I'm sorry," she said, adjusting her glasses. "This isn't guardianship. This is marriage." "Only on paper," Bunwoman assured. 30 days. Very discreet. Compensation substantial. Doin's gaze snapped back to the patient. His breathing was ragged, his eyes fever-bright yet oddly amused, like he wanted to see what she would do. The monitor beeped urgently. "You should have come sooner," she scolded, fear leaking through in irritation. "You're lucky to still be breathing. Your lungs are not a pride contest." Despite his condition, his mouth curved faintly. "Alive," she shot back. "Let's keep it that way." The suits pressed the pen into her hand. Doin's heart raced, but the oath she carried, even as a student, was louder than fear. She signed. Minutes later, they were rushing him into surgery. As the gurney rolled, his hand brushed hers, cool but steady. "Your name," he whispered. "Doin." "Thank you, Doin." His gaze flicked to the paper with both their names. "I'm—" "Don't tell me," she interrupted quickly. "If I know, I'll Google you, and if I Google you, I'll faint, and if I faint, I'll be useless. Go. Breathe." Hours later, the procedure was done. Crisis over for now. Doin checked his chart, exhaustion pressing heavy on her shoulders. When he stirred awake, his voice was softer. "Status. You'll live," she said. "Which is fortunate, because annulments are awkward." He smiled at that, genuine, fleeting. "I owe you. You owe me a night of uninterrupted sleep," she muttered. "Welcome to Munlyt Stories, where moonlight meets myth. Love timeless tales? Then hit like, subscribe. Don't forget to tell us where you are watching from in the comment, and please join our circle. Every story begins with you. The door opened. Bunwoman returned, flanked by more suits. But this time, an older woman swept in first. Elegant, silver hair in a bun, eyes sharp but warm. "How many?" the patient said, his voice respectful but strained. "Grandmother." Her eyes softened as they landed on Doin. Then, to everyone's shock, her lips curved into a delighted smile. "So," she said, clasping Doin's hands with surprising strength, "my stubborn grandson has finally chosen a wife. And a good one." The suits blinked. Doin blinked harder. The grandmother laughed, triumphant. "At last! The Kong family will sleep peacefully tonight." Doin, still in her scrubs, still ink-smudged from the hurried signature, could only stare. She had just saved a life, accidentally married Seoul's most eligible heir, and apparently gained the approval of the one woman whose opinion terrified everyone else. Doin had hoped that after the bizarre emergency marriage, she could quietly fade back into normal hospital life, rounds, exams, noodles. Surely a man wealthy enough to have executives in his sick room would annul things swiftly and discreetly. Her hopes shattered exactly a week later in the hospital cafeteria. She was balancing a tray of lukewarm soup when the air shifted, an unmistakable ripple of whispers. Nurses giggled behind their hands. Medical interns craned their necks. Even the stern head surgeon suddenly straightened his coat. Doin turned, and her spoon nearly clattered to the floor. There he was, her husband. No oxygen mask, no four-line, just a tailored suit that probably cost more than her tuition. He was flanked by bodyguards who looked allergic to smiles, yet his own face was calm, unreadable. Except those eyes, sharp and amused, as if still replaying their midnight banter. Her mouth went dry. "You're out of bed!" she blurted before her brain caught up. You shouldn't be out of bed. Across the room, his lips twitched. He strode toward her, ignoring the curious stares. Doctor. Student, she corrected instinctively. Student wife, he amended smoothly, loud enough for the cafeteria to hear. Every head whipped toward her. Doyen nearly dropped her soup. You can't just... She lowered her voice. Are you insane? Announcing that in front of an entire cafeteria. I prefer honesty, he said, effortlessly stealing the tray from her hands and setting it on a table. Also, I dislike soup. She folded her arms. You dislike oxygen masks too, but you still needed them. That earned her a soft laugh. You're consistent. I like that. Who exactly are you? She demanded, though dread was already curling in her stomach. He extended a hand, as though introducing himself at a polite networking event. Kong Jae-min, Kong Group's heir. And apparently, your husband. The cafeteria gasped as if a K-drama twist had just dropped live. Doyen stared at him. The name hit her like a thunderclap. Kong Group. Skyscrapers, department stores, entire TV stations. She had walked past his billboards 100 times. Never imagined she'd share paperwork with him. This is absurd, she whispered. Agreed, he said pleasantly, but also binding. For 30 days. Before she could answer, another voice cut through the noise. There you are. It was her. Madame Kong, his grandmother. Regal as royalty, moving through the cafeteria like it was her personal salon. Students scurried out of her path. She reached them, eyes bright with unmistakable delight. Doyen, Helmini said warmly, taking her hand. Doyen blinked. Jaemin cleared his throat. Helmini. But his grandmother ignored him. She looked at Doyen like she'd just discovered treasure. Our family has waited so long for Jaemin to accept marriage. And he chose you. Her eyes glittered with satisfaction. I knew his stubborn heart just needed the right woman. Around them, whispers exploded. Doyen felt her pulse gallop. She wanted to explain, to protest, but Helmini squeezed her hand with such genuine joy that the words stuck in her throat. Beside her, Jaemin simply smirked, as if amused by the chaos he'd unleashed. And Doyen realized, with a sinking heart, that her 30-day contract was about to get very, very public. Doyen sat stiffly on the leather sofa in Kong Jaemin's penthouse, clutching a mug of green tea she hadn't asked for. The place looked like an architectural magazine had exploded, floor-to-ceiling windows, art that didn't match but screamed expensive, and a coffee table she was afraid to breathe near. Across from her, Jaemin leaned casually in an armchair, the picture of relaxed wealth, though his eyes never stopped watching her. Between them sat a glossy folder, the contract. Doyen cleared her throat. So we're really doing this? You already signed, he reminded her. His voice was calm, but there was a teasing curl at the edge. Yes, under duress, she shot back. The patient was dying. Romantic, he said dryly. She gave him a look. Let's be clear, Mr. Kong. This is 30 days. No complications. No nonsense. Agreed, he said smoothly, flipping open the folder. But we need ground rules. The board is already circling like vultures. If we don't look convincing, they'll tear us apart. Doyen groaned. Convincing how? Appearances, he said simply. Hand-holding. Public smiles. The occasional dinner together. Nothing extravagant. Her eyes narrowed. You're suggesting fake dating. With cameras. Essentially. She took a long sip of tea, glaring at him over the rim. Fine. Then I have conditions too. One of his brows arched. I'm listening. First, she began, ticking her fingers. No interfering with my medical studies. Exams don't wait for chaebol scandals. Done. Second, no surprise appearances at the hospital cafeteria. You nearly gave 3 nurses a heart attack yesterday. He almost smiled. Noted. Third, she hesitated, then plunged ahead. No kissing. Absolutely none. I don't care if the cameras demand it. Find another actress for that. For the first time, his composure slipped. His lips parted, surprise flickering across his face before he recovered. Dramatic, he murmured. I mean it, Doyen said firmly. No romance, no rings, no nonsense. Strictly professional. Professional marriage, he repeated, as if testing the taste of it. Yes. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. His gaze held hers, steady and unreadable. Then I'll add one clause of my own. Doyen's stomach tightened. Which is, no falling in love, he said simply. It complicates everything. The words hung in the air like a dare. She let out a laugh that was more nervous than she intended. Falling in love with you? Please. I have enough stress memorizing antibiotic regimens. Good, he replied, his face unreadable again. Then we're agreed. He extended a hand across the table. Doyen stared at it. The handshake felt absurdly formal, but something about the glint in his eyes made her hesitate. Reluctantly, she reached out. His palm was warm, steady, and annoyingly reassuring. 30 days, she said. 30 days, he confirmed. The contract closed with a decisive snap. Somewhere above the city, neon lights flickered. Below, reporters sharpened their pens. And in that sleek, silent penthouse, Doyen realized she had just shaken hands on the most dangerous exam of her life, one without a syllabus, one she couldn't cram for. Doyen dragged her single suitcase into Kong Jaemin's penthouse and immediately wished she'd brought a tour guide. The place was enormous, more museum than home. Glass walls framed the Seoul skyline, chandeliers glimmered like constellations, and the living room rug looked so soft she felt guilty stepping on it. Her entire dorm room could have fit inside the walk-in closet she'd glimpsed earlier. Twice. Try not to get lost, Jaemin said, watching her expression with barely concealed amusement. He wore another immaculate suit, as though he'd never heard of sweatpants. We wouldn't want to issue a missing persons report for my wife. Funny, Doyen muttered, dragging her suitcase further inside. And for the record, I've been lost in worse places. Anatomy lab, for example. Anatomy lab doesn't have 4 kitchens. Her head snapped toward him. 4. He smirked. 2 for staff, 1 for entertaining, and 1 for me. You cook. Occasionally. She tried to picture Kong Jaemin chopping onions in his $1,000 shirt and almost laughed. Almost. Before she could press him further, a familiar voice rang out. There she is. Halmini swept into the room like a royal procession of one. She wore a silk hanbok in deep jade, her silver hair coiled in its signature bun, and her eyes sparkled with delight. She reached Doyen before Jaemin could even stand. My granddaughter-in-law, she declared proudly, taking Doyen's hands. You are even lovelier today. Doyen blinked. Thank you, ma'am. Halmini, the older woman corrected firmly. You are family now. Something inside Doyen softened. Back home in Nigeria, her grandmother had used the same tone, the same fierce tenderness. Against her will, Doyen smiled. Halmini. The woman beamed, then turned to her grandson. I told you, Jaemin. She is perfect. Jaemin gave a resigned sigh. Halmini, you're exaggerating. Nonsense. Do you know how many society daughters beg to marry you? All empty smiles. All trained curtsies. But this one, she squeezed Doyen's hand affectionately. This one has fire in her eyes. She will keep you alive. Doyen coughed, unsure whether to thank her or apologize. Halmini continued as if she were dictating to history itself. You will move in properly. No excuses. If I hear you sleeping in separate rooms, I will personally drag your mattress together. Halmini, Jaemin protested, his composure cracking just slightly. Yes, privacy, she waved him off. But I want to hear laughter echoing in this house, not silence. Do you understand? Doyen's cheeks heated. Jaemin looked dangerously close to smirking. Yes, Halmini, Doyen said quickly. The old woman kissed her cheek, satisfied. Good girl. Now, dinner at the family estate tomorrow. We're something that makes reporters faint. With that, Halmini swept back out, leaving a trail of perfume and authority. Silence stretched. Doyen finally exhaled. Your grandmother is intense. Jaemin leaned against the sofa, eyes gleaming. She likes you. That's rare. Well, Doyen muttered, tugging her suitcase toward the guest room, at least one Kong approves of me. His smirk widened. Who said I don't? She froze, heartbeat doing something entirely unhelpful. Then she marched off without answering, muttering about exams. Behind her, Jaemin's quiet chuckle followed like a secret she wasn't ready to face. Doyen never thought she would one day be sitting in a conference room, learning how to smile. Yet here she was, in Kong Group's glossy PR headquarters, trapped between a stylist armed with lipstick and a manager wielding a laser pointer like a sword. On the screen was a slideshow titled, "How to be a Kong Wife, the Public Image Handbook." She blinked. "Is this real life?" "Very real," Co Min Jae, Jaemin's PR chief, said with the enthusiasm of a man allergic to humor. "Your posture, your wave, even your laugh. Everything must convey poise and dignity." Doyen frowned. "What's wrong with my laugh?" "Too genuine," Min Jae said delicately. Translation: Jaemin murmured from his seat at the head of the table. "Too loud." She turned on him. "Excuse me? My laugh is musical." "Your laugh echoes down corridors," he countered smoothly. "It's called joy, Mr. Kong." The stylist giggled before catching herself. Min Jae cleared his throat and clicked to the next slide. A photo of Doyen entering the hospital cafeteria yesterday, frozen mid-squint. "Unacceptable," he declared. "That's my face," she said flatly. "Then we must teach a discipline." Doyen groaned. "I didn't sign up for this." "You did," Jaemin reminded her with a pointed look. "Contract marriage, remember? Appearances matter." "Appearances matter," she mimicked under her breath, glaring at him. He smirked, infuriatingly unbothered. The next hour was a blur of practice waves, photogenic angles, and smile drills. Doyen nearly choked when Min Jae asked her to walk as if floating. "Floating? I'm a medical student, not a ghost," she protested, tripping over the polished floor. Jaemin caught her elbow effortlessly. "Try smaller steps," he advised, his tone infuriatingly patient. "Don't help me," she snapped, pulling free. "You'll fall." "Then I'll fall with dignity," she muttered. By the time the session ended, Doyen was exhausted and cranky. Min Jae, however, looked optimistic for the first time in his career. "She has potential," he admitted. "Potential," Doyen repeated, offended. "High potential," Min Jae corrected hastily. Halmini appeared just then, gliding into the room with regal calm. "How did my granddaughter-in-law perform?" she asked. "She," Min Jae hesitated, "is learning." Halmini's gaze swept to Doyen, warm and approving. "Good. Don't let them change your spirit. A Kong wife must have steel, not just smiles." Doyen blinked, startled by the unexpected support. "Thank you, Halmini." The old woman turned to her grandson. "Jaemin, don't overmanage her. She's not a project." "Yes, Halmini," he said smoothly. Doyen fought the urge to grin at him. "Score one for her." As they left the building together, Jaemin walked at her side, hands in his pockets. "You did better than I expected." "That almost sounded like a compliment," she teased. "It was," he said, glancing at her. "Don't get used to it." She laughed, loudly on purpose. Heads turned. Jaemin shook his head, but there was unmistakable amusement in his eyes. For once, Doyen thought, maybe this ridiculous arrangement wouldn't be entirely unbearable. The Kong family dining table could have doubled as a runway. Gleaming chandeliers cast a golden glow over dishes so artfully arranged they looked stolen from a food magazine. At the head sat Madame Kong, regal as ever, while the rest of the clan occupied their places like chess pieces. Doyen sat beside Jaemin, painfully aware of the microphone discreetly clipped near the flower centerpiece. PR had insisted, for transparency, so the media can hear your harmony as a couple. Harmony! She was 2 seconds from a nervous breakdown. A server placed a delicate plate of kimchi before her. Doyen picked up her chopsticks, took one bite, and winced before she could stop herself. "Oh, that's sharp." The table went silent. 10 pairs of Kong eyes swung toward her. Jaemin stiffened. Halmini's lips twitched. "Sharp." "Yes," Doyen admitted quickly, cheeks heating. "Not bad. Just like it has opinions." Silence stretched. Then, unexpectedly, Halmini laughed, a warm, rich sound that filled the hall. "At last! Someone who dares to tell the truth about our cook's kimchi." The tension broke. Even Jaemin exhaled, though he shot her a sideways look that clearly said you're insane. Dinner resumed. Plates shifted. Wine poured. Doyen tried to breathe normally, but every word felt magnified by the microphone. "So, Doyen," one of Jaemin's uncles said smoothly, "how did you and my nephew meet?" Doyen froze. The truth. in a hospital during a medical crisis, followed by an accidental marriage contract, was not on the approved PR script. She glanced at Jae-min. Through mutual obligations, he said calmly, cutting into a steak. It was sudden, but effective. Effective, Do-yeon echoed before she could stop herself. He looked at her, eyes gleaming with challenge. Wouldn't you say so? Her lips curved into a reluctant smirk. Effective like antibiotics. Necessary, but not exactly romantic. Across the table, Halmini chuckled again. I like her honesty. Jaemin's cousin muttered. Unusual honesty. Halmini's gaze snapped to him, silencing the comment instantly. Do-yeon swallowed a laugh. If nothing else, Halmini was firmly on her side. As dessert arrived, something small, golden, and definitely more art than food, Do-yeon leaned slightly toward Jae-min. You didn't warn me about the microphones. You didn't ask, he murmured back. You enjoy watching me flail, don't you? His lips curved faintly. Immensely. She shot him a glare that might have wilted a lesser man. He only sipped his wine, smug as ever. The evening wrapped with polite bows and obligatory photographs. As they stood for the final picture, Do-yeon whispered through her smile. Next time, I'm picking the restaurant. Somewhere with real portions. Jaemin's eyes flickered with amusement. Street food. Exactly. Scandalous, he murmured, just as the camera clicked. Later, as the chauffeur drove them back, Halmini patted Do-yeon's hand. You did well. They will underestimate you. Good. Let them. Do-yeon met her approving gaze, a little steadier now. For the first time since the madness began, she thought. Maybe she could survive this family circus after all. The morning after family dinner, Do-yeon's phone buzzed like it was possessed. At first she assumed it was her alarm misbehaving. Then she opened her messages. Her WhatsApp was on fire. Her Instagram DMs were exploding. Even her long-forgotten Twitter had resurrected itself. Every single notification carried some version of the same headline. Chaebol heir Kong Jae-min secretly married. Mystery wife identified as Nigerian medical student. Thank you so much for staying with us till this very point of the story. If you are enjoying it, please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. We'd love to know where you are watching from, and hear the lessons you learned from this story, and your thoughts on how we can continue improving to give you the very best. Do-yeon nearly dropped her phone into her cereal bowl. Oh no. No, no, no. Across the penthouse kitchen, Jae-min appeared perfectly composed, scrolling through his tablet while sipping black coffee. You made the front page. She gawped at him. You're calm? The internet just discovered I exist, and they're tearing through my Facebook pictures from 2015. Your braces phase was charming, he said without looking up. Do-yeon groaned, covering her face. This is a nightmare. Just then, her phone rang. Caller ID, Tosin. She answered, bracing herself. Girl! Tosin's voice screeched through the line. Are you joking with me? I step away for one night, and suddenly you're soul's most wanted wife. It's complicated, Do-yeon muttered. Complicated? Do-yeon, you're trending in 3 languages. I had to defend you on a K-drama forum where they were arguing whether your bun was symbolic. Do-yeon choked. Symbolic of what? Strength, apparently. Or stubbornness. Opinions are divided. Jaemin's lips twitched behind his coffee cup. Tosin continued without pause. Okay, listen. We need a counterplan. The tabloids are painting you like a scholarship charity case who trapped him into marriage. If you want to survive, you need to control the narrative. The narrative? Do-yeon repeated weakly. Yes. Cute couple outings. Public smiles. You know, dates. Jae-min finally looked up. I was just about to suggest the same. Do-yeon's eyes narrowed. Of course you were. Tosin gasped. Was that his voice? Put me on speaker. No, Do-yeon said firmly, hanging up before Tosin could interrogate him through the phone. She turned back to Jae-min, arms crossed. So your grand idea is to let the whole city stalk us? He shrugged. Better to control the story than let it control you. And what exactly does your control involve? Bookstore date, he said simply. She blinked. Bookstore. Low risk. Harmless. Photogenic. You read. I look brooding. The public eats it up. Do-yeon stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You think reading next to you in a bookstore will fix a PR scandal? Yes, she huffed. Fine, but I'm choosing the book. Later that afternoon, when they stepped into Seoul's most stylish bookstore, flashbulbs exploded like fireworks. Doyen's cheeks burned, but she straightened her back. If they wanted a show, she'd give them one. She grabbed the first book within reach and held it up. Look, she said sweetly for the cameras. How to Deal with Difficult People. Perfect for us. Jaemin's smirk was audible in his silence. The tabloids went wild. The bookstore date was supposed to be simple. Walk in, look photogenic, leave unscathed. But simple apparently did not exist in Doyen's dictionary. For one thing, she had chosen that book, How to Deal with Difficult People, and held it up for the paparazzi with a smile so sweet it could rot teeth. The photo had already gone viral before they even left the aisle. Your sense of humor is reckless, Jaemin muttered as they strolled deeper into the store. My sense of humor is survival, she shot back. Besides, the internet loves it. You should be thanking me. He raised a brow. For calling me difficult? If the shoe fits, she trailed off, deliberately eyeing his polished Italian loafers. To her surprise, he chuckled under his breath. Not the polite, businesslike exhale he gave in boardrooms, but an actual laugh. Warm, unguarded, almost human. Doyen blinked. Did you just laugh? You make it sound like a medical emergency, he said dryly. It is a medical emergency. Someone call cardiology. Kang Jaemin has a sense of humor. The photographer hiding near the shelf snapped furiously as Doyen doubled over laughing at her own joke. Jaemin shook his head, but the corner of his mouth betrayed him. They wandered to the cafe section, where a barista nervously offered them lattes on the house. Cameras still hovered outside the glass, so Jaemin leaned closer across the table. Smile, he instructed softly. Doyen rolled her eyes, but plastered on a grin. You know, if I keep smiling like this, my face muscles are going to need physical therapy. Good for publicity, he said smoothly. Bad for my medical career. You'll thank me when you pass orthopedics, he replied, deadpan. She snorted into her latte, nearly choking. You're impossible. He tilted his head, studying her. Yet you're still here. For a moment, the banter fizzled into something quieter. His gaze was steady, unreadable, but softer than before. Doyen quickly looked away, pretending to focus on her cup. The cameras outside flashed again, and just like that, the moment broke. By the time they left, reporters swarmed them with questions. How did you meet? What's married life like? Is this true love? Jaemin slipped an arm around her shoulders. Smooth, practiced, PR perfect. Doyen almost jumped, then remembered the rules. Appearances. Harmony. So she leaned in, plastered on her brightest grin, and quipped for the microphones. Married life is like this latte, sweet, foamy, and sometimes burns your tongue. The crowd erupted in laughter. Jaemin froze for half a second, then smiled so convincingly it almost looked real. Inside the car afterward, Doyen groaned. Sweet, foamy, burns your tongue. Why do I open my mouth? He glanced at her, eyes glinting. Because when you do, people believe you. She rolled her eyes again, but secretly, she felt lighter. Maybe this contract marriage wasn't all doom and scandal. Maybe, just maybe, it had room for laughter. If Doyen thought the bookstore date had been chaotic, she hadn't met Choi Hannah. The first time Doyen saw her was 3 days later at the entrance of a trendy Gangnam gallery. She and Jaemin had just stepped out of the car for another carefully orchestrated public appearance when a glossy black limousine pulled up. Out stepped Hannah, tall, radiant, wrapped in designer silk that probably cost more than Doyen's medical tuition. Her smile was practiced, dazzling, and aimed squarely at the cameras. A tiny dog peeked from her handbag, yapping like it too had a PR contract. Reporters gasped. Hannah SSI, are you here to congratulate Kang Jaemin on his marriage? Of course, Hannah purred, eyes sliding over to Jaemin. We're such old friends. I had to see who finally convinced him to settle down. Her gaze landed on Doyen. One delicate eyebrow arched. And this must be the wife. Doyen smiled politely, though every instinct screamed danger. Yes. Nice to meet you. Likewise. Hannah extended a manicured hand. Her grip was surprisingly firm, as if she wanted to test Doyen's backbone. The cameras clicked furiously. Inside the gallery, the tension only sharpened. Hannah floated at Jaemin's side with the ease of someone who had occupied the spot before. She commented on the art, whispered jokes the photographers lapped up, and introduced her dog to the guests like royalty. Doyen trailed beside them, resisting the urge to roll her eyes. "So," Hannah said sweetly, turning to her at last, "what is it you do again?" "Charity work. Modeling. Medical school," Doyen answered. A flicker of surprise crossed Hannah's face before the smile returned. "Oh, how admirable. You must be very busy with classes. And yet, you still find time to play house with Jaemin." Doyen's smile sharpened. "Well, unlike some, I can multitask." Jaemin coughed, nearly choking on his champagne. Hannah blinked, taken aback for the brief a second, before recovering with another perfect laugh. "Fiery," she said, studying Doyen like a new exhibit. "He does like fire." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of flashing lights and pointed remarks. Doyen held her ground, refusing to let Hannah's subtle digs ruffle her composure. As they finally escaped into the car, Doyen exhaled heavily. "Does every ex of yours come with a dog and a press crew?" Jaemin's lips curved faintly. "Only Hannah. And you didn't think to warn me?" "You handled her," he said simply, his tone carrying a trace of pride. Doyen crossed her arms. "She called me a housewife in front of 20 reporters. And you called her out without raising your voice," he countered. "That's more effective than anything I could have said." She blinked, caught off guard by the compliment. "Was that approval?" "Observation," he corrected smoothly. But as the city lights flickered past the car windows, Doyen noticed something new in his eyes. Not mockery, not calculation. Something quieter. And for the first time, she wondered if this contract marriage might be shifting into territory no clause could control. The Con Group boardroom looked less like a meeting space and more like a war council. Dark suits lined the table, the air thick with power and polished with polish. At the head sat Jaemin, calm as carved marble. Beside him sat Doyen, acutely aware she was the only one in scrubs beneath her borrowed blazer. The board members had already been murmuring before she entered. Words like foreign, scandal, and annulment floated across the room like smoke. One particularly stern director cleared his throat. "Chairman Kong," his eyes deliberately avoided Doyen, "the family's reputation cannot endure this improvised marriage. The press is ruthless. We suggest you nullify it immediately before further damage is done." Doyen's stomach clenched. She braced herself for Jaemin's agreement. This was the out he needed. The contract had always been temporary. Instead, he leaned back, expression cool. "No." The room stilled. The director frowned. "No. I will not annul the marriage," Jaemin said evenly. "Doyen is my wife. That is final." The words struck like a gavel. Doyen blinked, struggling to process. He'd called her his wife. Not contract. Not temporary. Just wife. Another board member leaned forward. "With respect, Jaemin, this decision jeopardizes shareholders' confidence. You must think rationally." "I am thinking rationally," he countered, voice like steel. "What damages reputation more? A marriage the media already accepts, or a board forcing a public annulment that proves them right?" Murmurs rippled. He had a point, and the directors knew it. Hermione, seated silently at the far end, finally spoke. "Enough. My grandson has chosen." Her eyes twinkled as she glanced at Doyen. "And for once, he has chosen wisely." Doyen nearly choked on air. Was the formidable matriarch smiling at her? "Yes, there is noise," Hermione continued. "But noise passes. A woman who can stand beside Jaemin in the storm deserves to stay beside him in the sun." The board fell quiet. No one dared challenge her authority. Doyen sat frozen, pulse racing. This was the Kong family in action. Power plays masked as polite discussion, fortunes hanging on words. And somehow, she was now part of it. When the meeting adjourned, she followed Jaemin into the corridor, still dazed. "Why did you do that?" she blurted. "Do what?" he asked, adjusting his cufflinks. "Defend me. In front of all of them. You could have ended this mess." He glanced at her, eyes steady. Ending it would have been the mess. "That's not an answer." He paused, as if weighing his words. "You're my wife, Doyen. Contract or not, I don't let anyone disrespect my wife." The simple conviction in his tone left her breathless. She looked away quickly, focusing on a random painting on the wall. "You're infuriating, you know that." "Frequently," he agreed, lips curving faintly. But as they walked out together, Doyne couldn't shake the warmth that had settled in her chest. Unexpected, unwelcome, and entirely real. Doyne had always been good at self-diagnosis. Stress headache, hydrate, heart palpitations, too much caffeine, sleepless nights, blame exams. But there was no clinical explanation for the way her chest fluttered whenever Jamin looked at her for a beat too long, or the way her pulse leapt when his hand brushed hers in passing, or how she caught herself memorizing the curve of his smile when he thought no one was watching. She hated it. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to herself in the hospital library, surrounded by anatomy textbooks. "It's just adrenaline. Temporary. A side effect of proximity. Talking to yourself again." Tosin's voice piped through her phone screen. They were on a late-night video call, Tosin munching chin-chin from Legos. Doyne groaned. "Don't start. Girl, you're glowing. That's not library lighting. That's contract husband lighting." Doyne buried her face in her notes. "It's not like that. We agreed. No romance, no nonsense." "Uh-huh. And how's that going?" Doyne hesitated. Memories flashed. His steady defense of her in the boardroom, the way his grandmother's eyes lit up whenever she walked into a room, the rare but genuine laughter he saved only for her. She sighed. "Terribly." "Exactly," Tosin said smugly. "You're falling. Then I need to unfollow gravity." Meanwhile, Jamin seemed oblivious, or worse, unaffected. He carried on with his usual poise, but Doyne noticed the small ways he accommodated her, making sure her coffee mug was always full, rearranging his schedule so she could study in peace, ensuring she was never cornered alone by hostile relatives. Every gesture chipped away at the walls she'd built. The breaking point came one rainy evening. They returned from another exhausting PR event, umbrellas dripping, clothes damp. Doyne tried to retreat to her room, but Jamin stopped her with a quiet, "Wait." She turned, heart hammering. He stood there, hair damp, tie loosened, eyes unusually unguarded. "You did well tonight," he said softly. "Better than I deserved." Doyne swallowed. "It's part of the contract." "No," he said, shaking his head. "It's not. You've gone beyond anything I asked. And he broke off, searching for words. "I notice." The air between them shifted. Heavy. Fragile. Doyne's instincts screamed danger. If she let this continue, the contract wouldn't be the only thing binding her. Her heart would be, too. So she laughed, too loud, too forced. "Well, don't get used to it. I'm charging extra for emotional labor." His brows lifted slightly, then he smirked, though something in his gaze lingered. "Noted." She fled to her room, shutting the door with a shaky exhale. On the other side, she heard him chuckle softly. And in the quiet, Doyne pressed her palms to her face. No antibiotics, no surgical tools, no textbook could cure what she was catching. It wasn't a fever. It wasn't stress. It was him. Seoul's skies opened without warning, unleashing sheets of rain that turned the city into a blur of headlights and umbrellas. Doyne stood beneath a glass bus stop awning, clutching her bag to her chest. She was soaked from the dash across the street. Beside her, Jamin looked irritatingly composed despite the downpour, hair damp but neat, coat tailored to deflect even weather. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, wringing water from her sleeve. "You have 3 cars, don't you?" 4, he corrected calmly. "But traffic is frozen. The bus is faster." She shot him a look. "The Kong heir. Waiting for a bus. This city is going to implode." "Then let it," he said, his voice low, almost amused. They stood in silence for a while, listening to the rain drum against the shelter. People passing by sneaked glances, some whispering into their phones. Doyne ignored them, trying to slow her racing heart. Her mind replayed his words from the night before, "I notice." She tried to laugh it off, bury the flutter in sarcasm, but here, in the quiet, with only rain between them, the memory felt louder. "Long day," she murmured, more to herself than to him. He nodded. "You handled it well." "You always say that," she said, a little sharper than intended. Like I'm one of her quarterly reports. That drew a surprised laugh from him. Would you prefer poetry? She blinked at him. Kong Jae-min, the man made of contracts and stock reports, offering poetry? She almost wanted to say yes, just to hear what he'd come up with. But before she could answer, thunder cracked overhead. Instinctively, she flinched, and his hand found hers. Warm, steady, grounding. Her breath caught. For a moment, they simply stood there, fingers entwined, the rain blurring the rest of the world. His eyes searched hers, softer than she'd ever seen them. "Doyen," he began, his voice low and certain. Her pulse hammered. This was it, the moment she'd been dreading, the one her heart secretly craved. If he said what she thought he was about to say, there would be no turning back. But just as the words hovered on his lips, the bus screeched to a stop in front of them. The doors hissed open, people shuffled out, umbrellas clashing. The spell shattered. Doyen pulled her hand back, grasping for safety in motion. "Bus is here," she said quickly, stepping up before he could respond. He followed silently, expression unreadable, but his eyes lingered on her profile as they sat side by side. The ride was quiet, save for the rain against the windows. Doyen stared straight ahead, heart still pounding, trying to convince herself that nothing had happened, that she hadn't wanted him to finish that sentence. But the warmth of his hand still lingered in hers, impossible to ignore. And she knew, sooner or later, the rain would stop. And so would her excuses. The first sign of trouble arrived as a push notification on Doyen's phone while she was in class. Breaking, secret contract revealed. Kong Air's marriage exposed as business deal. Her stomach plummeted. She opened the article, and there it was, an image of the marriage contract. Entire paragraphs highlighted in yellow. Clauses she remembered all too well. 30 days. No romance. Strictly legal. Gasps rippled across the lecture hall. Screens lit up around her as classmates scrolled through the same headline. Whispers followed, sharp and merciless. So it was fake. She trapped him for money. No wonder Halmini was desperate. Doyen fled the room before the professor could call her name. By the time she reached the penthouse, reporters had already swarmed outside, cameras flashing like a lightning storm. She ducked inside with the help of a bodyguard, heart racing. Jae-min was waiting in the living room, suit jacket off, tie loosened, his expression carved from steel. "You've seen it," he said without preamble. "How did they even get it?" she demanded, shoving the phone at him. "This was supposed to be confidential." "The board," he said flatly, "or someone close to them. They want to undermine us." Doyen paced, fists clenched. "This is humiliating. They're calling me a gold digger. They're calling you," she broke off, throat tight. "Calculated," he supplied coolly. "I've been called worse." She stopped pacing, glaring at him. "How are you so calm? This ruins everything." His eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. "It only ruins us if we let it." Before she could argue, the door swung open. Madame Kong swept in, her presence filling the room like a thunderclap. "I warned them," she announced. "But still, they act like cowards, hiding behind leaks." Doyen braced herself for disappointment, for the inevitable demand to step aside quietly. Instead, Halmini crossed the room and grasped her hands. Doyen's throat tightened. "Halmini." Jae-min stepped closer, voice low but resolute. "We go public. Together. No more silence, no more hiding. If the city wants a story, we'll give them the real one." Doyen blinked at him. "The real one?" "Yes," he said, gaze steady. "That we chose each other. That what began as necessity has become something more." The implication made her heart lurch. Halmini nodded approvingly. "Good. Face them. Do not cower. The Kong family bends for no one." Outside, the press roared, hungry for blood. Inside, Doyen realized the game had changed. The contract wasn't just paperwork anymore, it was a battlefield. And for the first time, Jae-min was fighting not just for reputation, but for her. The leak had done more than rattle the tabloids, it rattled Doyen. Every headline screamed betrayal. Every comment thread dissected her motives. Even some of her classmates had begun avoiding her in the hallways, their whispers sharper than scalpels. She sat curled on the penthouse sofa, laptop shut, phone face down, trying to block out the noise. Jae-min stood nearby, speaking quietly into his phone with Minjae, his PR chief. Words like damage control and press conference drifted into the room. When he hung up, Doyen spoke before she could lose her nerve. We can't keep spinning lies, Jaemin. It's exhausting. The contract is out there, why not just admit it? He studied her carefully, hands in his pockets. You're suggesting we hand them a weapon. I'm suggesting we take the weapon back, she said firmly. If we hide, we look guilty. If we tell the truth ourselves, we control the story. Silence stretched between them. Then, unexpectedly, his lips curved faintly. You sound like you've been running companies for decades. I've just been surviving exams, she muttered. Same thing. Before he could respond, the elevator door slid open. Madame Kong swept in, her jade silk hanbok rustling like battle armor. Her sharp gaze landed on them both. You asked me here. Jaemin straightened. How many? There's something we need to tell you. Doyen's pulse jumped. She had faced brutal professors, grueling labs, even the chaos of Lagos traffic, but confessing the truth to Madame Kong felt like stepping into an exam with no answer sheet. Jaemin continued evenly. The marriage, it began as a legal arrangement, a necessity during my hospitalization. We signed a contract, 30 days, no complications. That's the truth. Halmini's expression did not change. Her hands folded calmly in front of her. And Doyen swallowed, forcing herself to meet the older woman's eyes. And it wasn't meant to be real. But, she faltered, heat creeping up her neck. It doesn't feel fake anymore. The room went silent. Even Jaemin looked at her, startled. Halmini finally exhaled, slow and deliberate. Then she smiled. At last, she said, voice warm with triumph. My grandson speaks of duty. My granddaughter-in-law speaks of heart. The board thinks this marriage is weakness. They are fools. It is strength. Doyen blinked. You are not angry. Angry. Halmini's laugh rang out. Child, you saved his life when arrogance nearly killed him. If you began as contract, so be it. You stayed, even when the storm came. That is no contract. That is choice. Jaemin's jaw tightened, but his gaze softened on Doyen. Something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement neither dared voice yet. Halmini clasped their hands together. Then we move forward, not hiding, not apologizing. The Kangs do not beg for approval, we set the terms. The old woman's authority filled the room. And for the first time since the scandal broke, Doyen felt something stronger than fear. She felt hope. Operation, honesty wasn't their downfall. It was their beginning. The penthouse was unusually quiet that night. Rain tapped against the windows, the city glowing faintly below. Doyen sat at the dining table with her textbooks spread out, but the words blurred uselessly. Her mind kept circling the same question. Why did Jaemin need a contract wife in the first place? When he finally entered the room, jacket draped over one arm, she didn't look up. You should tell me, she said softly. He paused. Tell you what? The real reason you needed a legal spouse. Because it wasn't just about medical consent. The contract said 30 days. Why 30? Why so urgent? Silence stretched. She finally looked up, and for once, Kang Jaemin did not look unreadable. He looked tired, human. He pulled out a chair and sat across from her. My mother. Doyen blinked. Your mother? She passed when I was 16, he said quietly. Before she died, she left a clause in her will. For me to inherit full authority over Kong Group, I had to be married by my 30th birthday. Married, not engaged, not negotiating. Married. Doyen's lips parted in shock. That's unusual. It was her way of forcing me to anchor myself, he explained. She worried I'd lose myself in the business. She believed marriage would teach me loyalty, partnership. His mouth tightened. The board has been circling, waiting for me to fail. When I collapsed in the hospital, they saw an opportunity. If I wasn't married in time, they could dismantle everything my mother built. Doyen's chest tightened. So you signed the contract with me? You were there. You didn't hesitate. His gaze locked on hers. You saved my life in more ways than one. She leaned back, stunned. The contract, the secrecy, the 30-day countdown, it all made sense now. But another realization stung. So to you I was convenient. No, his voice sharpened, urgent. You were necessary. And not just for the claws. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. You don't bend. Not for me, not for anyone. You argue. You laugh too loudly. You call me out when no one else dares. That's why my grandmother likes you. That's why I... He stopped, the unfinished sentence hanging heavy between them. Doyen's heart thudded. She wanted to demand he finish, but part of her was terrified of what she might hear. Instead, she folded her arms, masking nerves with sarcasm. So what happens when the 30 days are up? You keep the company, and I fade back into the shadows. His jaw tightened. Is that what you want? The question knocked the air out of her. Did she want that? A clean exit, her life back, her heart unscathed? Or had she already stepped too deep? She looked away, pretending to focus on her notes. I want to pass my exams, she said quietly. But the truth, pounding in her chest, was far more dangerous. Hermione summoned them to the Kong family estate the following morning. No assistants, no reporters, just the three of them in a sunlit sitting room lined with ancestral portraits. The weight of history seemed to press down from the walls. Doyen smoothed her skirt nervously, while Jamin sat beside her, his posture effortlessly regal. Hermione poured tea herself, a gesture so deliberate that Doyen knew something serious was coming. She placed the cups before them and folded her hands. The scandal has not ended, she began. The board still whispers. The press still claws. If you wish to silence them, you must prove yourselves. Prove? Jamin asked evenly. Yes. Her sharp gaze moved between them. Anyone can sign a contract. Few can convince the world their bond is real. If you wish this marriage to survive, if you wish to keep what your mother protected, Jamin, you must demonstrate not paperwork, but devotion. Doyen swallowed. How? Hermione leaned back, eyes gleaming. The charity gala. It is 3 nights from now. Every shareholder, every journalist, every rival family will be there. You will attend together, not as actors but as husband and wife. If they doubt your sincerity after that night, then the wolves will devour you. Doyen's heart pounded. That's an impossible test. Nothing worth keeping is easy, Hermione said simply. Jamin remained calm, but Doyen felt the tension in his hand resting on his knee. And if we succeed, he asked, then no one can touch you. Not the board, not the tabloids. You will be untouchable. Silence fell. Doyen stared at her teacup, the steam swirling like the chaos in her chest. A gala. Cameras. Reporters dissecting her every movement. The thought made her palms sweat. Hermione's voice softened unexpectedly. Child, I know this world is cruel. It will search for cracks, for weakness. But I have watched you. You do not cower. That is why I believe you can do this. Doyen blinked, caught off guard by the warmth in her tone. You believe in me? I do, Hermione said firmly. And I see how he looks at you when you are not watching. He crept up Doyen's neck. She risked a glance at Jamin, but he was unreadable, except for the faintest flicker in his eyes. Something she couldn't name. Hermione rose, signaling the end of the meeting. 3 nights. Prove them wrong. As they drove back to the city, the silence in the car was heavy. Doyen finally exhaled. So the gala. Easy. Just pretend to be hopelessly in love in front of the entire country. Jamin's lips curved faintly. Hopelessly. She shot him a look. Don't get ideas. But her voice wavered, betraying the truth she was trying so hard to bury. And Jamin, watching her with quiet intensity, knew the gala would test far more than their acting skills. It would test their hearts. The Kong family charity gala was less an event and more a battlefield, dressed in silk and sequins. Cameras lined the entrance, flashing like lightning. Reporters buzzed, voices sharp, eager to dissect every detail of the evening. Doyen sat frozen in the back seat of the sleek black car as they pulled up. Her gown, deep sapphire, chosen by Hermione herself, fit like it had been sewn with prayers and anxiety. Her sleek bun was polished to perfection, makeup subtle yet luminous. She had never looked so far from her scrubs. Beside her, Jamin adjusted his cufflinks, the very picture of unshakable calm. "Ready?" he asked. "No," she admitted, her voice shaking. "Good," he said softly, turning toward her. "Neither am I." The door opened, and they stepped out into chaos. Cameras flashed wildly. Questions flew like arrows. Mr. Kong, is it true your marriage is a contract? Mrs. Kong, how do you respond to the leaked documents? Are you in love or in business? Doyen's stomach clenched, but Jaemin reached for her hand, weaving his fingers through hers. His grip was steady, grounding. He leaned toward her, just enough for the microphones to catch his words. Smile, he murmured. Not for them. For me. Something in his tone steadied her. So she smiled, not the forced grin PR had drilled into her, but something softer, truer. The cameras erupted. Inside the ballroom, the glittering crowd parted as they entered. Whispers followed them, a tide of curiosity and doubt. Doyen felt every pair of eyes on her. She straightened her back, channeling Halmini's words, "Do not cower." Dinner passed in a blur of polite small talk and 2 perfect dishes. The true test came during the dance. Protocol demands it, Jaemin explained, extending his hand. Doyen hesitated, then placed her hand in his. The orchestra swelled, and suddenly she was gliding across the floor in his arms. You're staring, he said quietly. I'm trying to memorize the steps, she muttered. You're doing fine. His hand pressed lightly at her back, guiding her effortlessly. It should have felt staged, another performance for the cameras. But as their eyes met, the world seemed to narrow to just the 2 of them. Tell me the truth, she whispered, almost afraid of the answer. Are we still pretending? His gaze locked on hers, steady and unreadable. Do you want me to pretend? Her breath caught. She couldn't answer, not with the room spinning, not with the heat in his eyes pulling her dangerously close. The music slowed, the final note lingering. Applause thundered, but Doyen barely heard it. Her pulse was too loud. Reporters surged forward, microphones thrust like spears. Mr. Kong, Mrs. Kong, what do you say to those who doubt your marriage? Jaemin didn't hesitate. He lifted her hand to his lips, brushed a kiss across her knuckles, and said clearly, we say they are wrong. The ballroom exploded in flashes and gasps. And Doyen, caught between disbelief and a traitorous flutter in her chest, realized that Gala had proved something, if not to the world, then to herself. This was no longer just survival. This was something dangerously real. The morning after the gala, Doyen expected more glittering headlines about her gown, their dance, or Jaemin's dramatic declaration. Instead, her phone vibrated with a cruel surprise. Kong heir caught in late-night hotel rendezvous, contract wife betrayed. Her heart sank. The article showed a blurry photo of a man who could have been Jaemin entering a luxury hotel. The woman's face was pixelated, but the insinuation was enough. By the time she arrived at the hospital for rounds, whispers filled the corridors. Nurses glanced at her with pity, interns with curiosity. A classmate even muttered, "Guess money can't buy loyalty." Doyen clenched her jaw, forcing herself to focus on patience, but humiliation burned hot in her chest. She didn't text Jaemin, didn't call. If it was true, she didn't want excuses. If it wasn't, she didn't want rehearsed denials. By evening, exhaustion pressed heavy on her. She slumped in the break room, too drained to even open her notes. The door creaked, and she looked up, only to see him. Kong Jaemin, in her hospital, holding a bag of gimbap. His suit was rumpled, hair slightly disheveled, as though he'd come straight from war. She stared. You can't just walk in here. This is a hospital. I asked permission, he said calmly, placing the bag in front of her. Eat. I'm not hungry. You skipped lunch. Her eyes narrowed. So now you keep tabs on my meals? Yes, he said simply. Frustration flared. Then maybe you should explain why the whole city thinks you spent the night in a hotel with someone else. Something flickered across his face, not guilt, but cold fury. It's false. Fabricated. Convenient answer. Do you think I would humiliate you like that? His voice cut sharp, then softened. Doyen, look at me. Reluctantly, she did. His gaze was steady, unflinching. I don't know who planted that story, but I will find out. And I will end it. Until then, I need you to believe me. Her chest tightened. Part of her wanted to push him away, to shield herself from the risk of hope. But another part, the louder, traitorous part, believed him without hesitation. Silence stretched. Finally, she sighed, picking up the gimbap. You're lucky I like food more than drama. His lips curved faintly. Noted. They sat together in the quiet break room, sharing simple rice rolls while the storm outside raged in headlines. For once, it wasn't about contracts, appearances, or proving anything. It was just him and her. As she bit into the gimbap, warmth spread through her chest, not from the food, but from the way he watched her, protective and unyielding. Maybe the world doubted them. Maybe enemies schemed. But tonight, Doyen realized something vital. Whatever the scandal, whatever the storm, he chose to show up. And that choice mattered more than any headline. The hotel scandal refused to die. Every hour brought new speculation, new blurry sightings, new headlines dripping with doubt. Finally, Congroup's PR team decided on the only possible cure, a live interview. No scripted press release, no carefully edited footage, just Jaemin and Doyen, side by side, answering questions in front of millions. The studio lights were blinding. Doyen sat in the chair beside Jaemin, her palms damp, her heart hammering like she was about to defend a dissertation she hadn't prepared for. Across from them sat the anchor, sharp-eyed and hungry. "Mr. Kong," the anchor began, "the city is buzzing with rumors that your marriage is not only contractual but now compromised by alleged infidelity. What do you say to those who doubt you?" Jaemin leaned forward, his tone calm, deliberate. "I say they are wrong." The anchor's gaze flicked to Doyen. "And you, Mrs. Kong? How does it feel to see such headlines about your husband?" Doyen inhaled, willing her voice to stay steady. "It feels like noise. Hurtful, yes, but noise. Because when I look at him, I don't see scandal. I see the man who fought for me in front of his own board, who shows up even when it's inconvenient, who," she hesitated, heat rising to her cheeks, "who makes the noise fade." The audience held its breath. Even the anchor blinked. Jaemin's hand slid over hers on the armrest, warm and sure. "When I collapsed in the hospital months ago," he said, voice lower now, "I didn't think I'd wake up to someone like Doyen. But she signed her name beside mine when I was too weak to hold a pen. Contract or not, she gave me life." Doyen's throat tightened. He continued, gaze locked on the camera. "Yes, the marriage began under unusual circumstances. But it's no longer a contract. It's a choice. Every day, she chooses me. And I choose her." The studio erupted in flashes as photographers captured the moment. The anchor cleared her throat, clearly thrown off balance. "So you're saying this is real? Beyond paperwork?" Jaemin finally turned to Doyen, eyes soft but unwavering. "This is the most real thing in my life." Her chest squeezed. She hadn't expected him to say it so openly, so boldly. And in that moment, she knew she couldn't keep hiding behind sarcasm or deflection. "Yes," she said, voice clear. "This is real." The words hung in the studio like a final diagnosis. Certain. Irrefutable. Outside, the city would debate, analyze, and dissect. But as the cameras zoomed in on their joined hands, the world saw not contracts or scandals, only a couple choosing each other in the glare of the spotlight. For Doyen, that was enough. For now. The city was still asleep when Jaemin led Doyen to the rooftop of the Kong Tower. Dawn stretched across the horizon, painting the skyline in gold and pink. Below them, Seoul pulsed quietly, its chaos momentarily hushed. Doyen wrapped her arms around herself, shivering in the cool morning air. "You dragged me out of bed for this." "You'll survive," Jaemin said softly, his usual steel softened by something warmer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "Jaemin." "This time," he said, stepping closer. "No contracts. No signatures. Just us." He opened the box to reveal two simple bands. No diamonds, no corporate weight, just rings that felt startlingly human. Her throat tightened. "Are you serious?" "More serious than I've ever been," he said. "I don't care what the board thinks. I don't care what the tabloids print tomorrow. What I care about," his voice faltered for once, then steadied, "is you. That you're here. That you've stayed, even when you could have walked away 100 times." Doyen blinked rapidly, fighting the sting in her eyes. "I didn't stay for your company's shares, you know." "I know." His lips curved faintly. "You stayed for my terrible coffee." She laughed, wiping her cheek. "And your grandmother. She would disown me if you left." His tone was wry, but his gaze burned with sincerity. So don't leave. Stay. For real. Not 30 days. Forever. The rooftop seemed to tilt. Doyen's heart pounded so loudly she was sure the entire city could hear it. You're impossible, she whispered. True, he said, slipping the ring onto her finger. But I'm yours. Her hands trembled as she took the other band from the box. She slid it onto his finger, her voice shaking but clear. Then you're stuck with me, Kang Jae-min. No contracts. No clauses. Just vows. Silence stretched as the first rays of sunlight crowned the skyline. Then, without waiting for permission, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It wasn't for cameras. It wasn't for show. It wasn't even careful. It was real. When they finally broke apart, her forehead resting against his, Doyen whispered, You realize this means I'm officially part of this circus forever, right? He chuckled, low and warm. Good. I never wanted to face it alone. Above them, the sun rose higher, casting light over two people who had stumbled into marriage by accident but stayed in it by choice. Below, the tabloids would write headlines, the board would scheme, the city would gossip. But here, on this rooftop, none of that mattered. Here, it was just Jae-min and Doyen, husband and wife, for real this time. And for once, both of them felt untouchable. Thank you so much for staying with us till the very end of the story. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear the lessons you learned and your thoughts on how we can continue improving to give you the very best. Here at Munlyt Stories, every tale is crafted with passion, care, and dedication. Our mission is simple: to entertain, inspire, and connect us all across cultures and hearts. So, keep the conversation alive in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Till next time, we are Munlyt Stories, bringing you amazing tales that touch hearts and spark imaginations. Stay blessed. Stay inspired. See you in the next story.